the policy, this was apparently one of the first, or maybe the first formal policy in the UK on research data management specifically. There were a lot of things leading up to that, but I won't go into ancient history on you. Basically, it passed the University Senate in May 2011, and because it's quite nicely written, I can say that because I didn't write it. Chris Rusbridge, the previous former director of the Digital Curation Center, drafted it at the request of our librarian, and we came up with 10 brief principles, so it is quite readable, but not quite so brief for a PowerPoint. It says a lot of what it's doing is setting out the roles and responsibilities, what's expected of the researcher, what's expected of the university, and sort of what the boundary is, because we wanted to emphasize those responsibilities without without being seen to interfere in the researchers' control of their own data. So I think we got that balance pretty well, because other universities have been sort of copying what we set out. And I just wanted to underline that that didn't happen by magic. There was a wide consultation. There was a committee that talked really hard about what should be in it, and then we consulted widely across all the colleges and schools, got feedback, revised it before it was passed. So that's my picture of the policy. It doesn't really tell you that much, but Wordles are fun to put in PowerPoint slides. I think the language is softer than some of the other policies I've seen that is really focusing on a mandate, but at the time, because we were a bit cautious, being the first university in the UK to say we're going to have this policy, we really wanted to back up what the research funders were saying was needed, and that actually did seem to be the right tack to take. And I'm not sure why the word appropriate is so big. I've controlled for the words research and data, otherwise that would be the biggest words. But I think it's about depositing as appropriate in an appropriate repository. So on to the roadmap, how we're going to implement this wonderful policy, because, let's face it, it's just words until a lot of people start doing a lot of things. This is the picture of the roadmap, which is a high-level strategic plan. We've only kind of set out what we're going to do over an 18-month period, and then but the goals and objectives take us beyond that, and we can come up with some more deliverables after we see how far we get after 18 months. So data management planning, we're getting a lot of help with that set of work packages from the Digital Curation Center. We're looking at using their DMP online tool and customizing it for University of Edinburgh use. So we give them some of the answers based on the services we can provide. We also think it needs some customization right down to the research unit level, because, let's face it, all research, as we heard from colleagues at the table, all research looks different. And so you need to use the appropriate language for that research discipline. Active data infrastructure, my colleagues in the IT department are working on rolling out a petabyte or a couple of petabytes of storage so that to suit the majority of needs of all the researchers. We know, going right back to a 2007 research computing survey, that what the researchers really want from us is storage space. So before we get too far in rolling out all of the other shoulds and shouldn'ts and best practice, we want to make sure we have that storage in place so that they can have a place of secure, networked, backed up place to work on their data and collaborate with anyone that they were collaborating with around the world. The data stewardship is a lot of what I'm focusing on in terms of our data repository, thinking about the digital preservation requirements, 10 years and more, and also working across systems, because we use Pure for our current research information system to keep track of research projects, and we want all the systems to kind of make sense and work together and not cause the researcher to have to put in metadata multiple times. So there's a lot of interoperability in that work package. But what I'll talk about a little bit more is actually the data management support, which so as you see, the whole roadmap, it takes involvement from colleagues right across IS. It's been quite fun that way to get out of my silo and other people get out of theirs to work together. So what I mean by data management support is general consultancy and support service throughout the research process. I put this in at the last minute because everybody's been showing data life cycles, and I thought, oh, I have another good one. So unless you're sick of data life cycles, and let's face it, not everybody likes these data life cycles. I've come across several researchers, including the head of our steering group, who just goes, I don't get it, leave that thing out. But we tend to like it. So in the beginning, where the researcher has the clever idea and is designing their study, that's when they really should be doing their data management planning. That might come as a surprise to them, but that would be the time to start thinking about it. Then, of course, through all the research project itself, you have to provide some kind of infrastructure for them, like I was talking about with the storage. And then at the end, maybe you could think of it as a life course, if not a life cycle. How are they going to pass on that data for someone else to curate? Some may choose to do that themselves, but the majority would want to pass that on and publish it in a repository of some sort, and then move on to the next research project. So I borrowed this slide from Monash University, who will come up again. And right, so this is in one slide everything that we think comes under data management support in the roadmap. So we need guidance for academic staff, and at the moment we're doing that through our web pages. We need to be training people right from the beginning to establish better practice as people learn their research skills. So we've worked with three schools about embedding this online training course in their programs, and we're slowly getting out to others. I'll tell you more about Mantra in a minute. We're doing awareness raising. We haven't actually really started, but as soon as we know the storage is in place, in a couple more months, there'll be a schedule of awareness raising and service rollout to talk about, carrot and stick almost. Like, you're getting this storage, how are you going to use it? What procedures are you going to set up at the school level to allocate your space and manage things properly? And then the really tricky stuff, what about in-depth data management? Consultancy, maybe getting the idea of embedded librarians working on grants, costed in the grants. And we've got one pilot example of that with a research project called Acumen Advanced Quantitative Methods Network, which is a social science research project, or set of projects really, in Scotland and with speakers elsewhere. And I'm costed in for 6 days a year over 4 years to be a quality assurance advisor on their data management planning. So that'll be interesting to see how that works. And then we also need to train librarians and IT staff, of course, to raise their game. So this is what the online guidance looks like. Everybody's doing it now. We've had that in place since 2009, but we recently revised it. Not really sure how much. I mean, I have Google Analytics and things, but we need to find out more about whether it's meeting the researchers' needs. One thing that isn't in there that we know is costing, which is a tricky one, which we'll work on in the roadmap. And then there's Mantra, which came out of a JISC-funded project, but we're maintaining it and updating it. We think it's quite useful. This shows you that this is the only place I'll talk about what the names of the units are. There's about 8 units. It's a self-paced course. You can go to the website. Anybody can go to the website and work through it at their own pace. I've been told by a couple of people doing the whole thing takes about 3 hours. But that doesn't count the recommended reading, which can give you a lot more if you want to. And it uses an online tool called Xerti, which is a learning software creation tool. At the moment, it doesn't show up in the iPlayer because it's based on, it doesn't show up on the iPad because it's based on Flash, but we're going to migrate. There's a new version that uses HTML5, so we're going to migrate it over to that. So there's a lot of stuff in there that seems to be quite effective. This is, again, another Wordle just taking a peek at what shows up in one unit about documentation and metadata. Maybe should have controlled those words. So what about the liaison librarian training? We've done a pilot with 4 liaison librarians, and over the winter, and now we're going to train another 4 because that seemed to go pretty well. So that's a collaboration between the data library and our user services division, where the librarians are based. It's based on Mantra. It really was inspired by data intelligence for librarians, which you'll hear more about in the next talk. And again, Monash. This is Sam Searle, who was at Monash, and she's moved on, but she won an award for doing data management in an Australian university library. And she used her grant money to come to the UK and visit with us and Oxford and other places. And we had her give a talk about what it was like, what their program with liaison librarians was. And this is what they had accomplished up to 2009, so they really were an early trendsetter. And what I really got from her, and I keep remembering as I'm doing this training, is that it's all about building up the confidence of the librarians to go out there and talk to the researchers about data. So I realized I should have had a picture of our first 4 trainees, and I didn't, so I found this on the internet. So the idea here is we've trained our librarians, and we love librarians, so we've put out this training kit, so other librarians who want to use our method can go and set up their own small groups and train themselves. So it's the training kit. So I'll just tell you how we did it, and this is all part of the kit as well. And the approach really is that the librarians are professionals. They've got their own experience to bring to these issues. It's not so much about right and wrong answers. It's about getting people talking, sharing stories in a small, comfortable, private space. I think it's important to talk to them about how they want to do their training, get their agreement about how we proceed, not just get the permission from the managers to train them. So emphasis on facilitation rather than teaching, which is why anyone can do it. You don't need to have an expert if you have a good facilitator. These are the topics. It's a bit of sometimes it's putting 2 Mantra units together or skipping one. These are the topics that we agreed were important. And we had guest speakers with a short talk to remind people about what the topic of that week was about, followed by long discussions. It was a 2-hour duration. People were talking through the whole time. So either we got a very talkative first group, or it worked very well. And we also used group exercises from UK Data Archive, which are excellent, such as looking at different kinds of consent forms and saying, now, is this enough to go ahead and publish that data, or should that consent form be changed? So it really gets people thinking. And we also gave some homework, but we gave them plenty of time to do it, at least 2 weeks in between each session, because they had to fit this into their regular job. And the main thing was they do go through the Mantra unit and the recommended reading, and then they have reflective questions, which they either can write in advance or just be prepared to talk about in a group. It kind of puts them in the shoes of a researcher. And then right now the first 4 librarians are going to interview a researcher and write up a data curation profile to build up their confidence actually taking what they've learned into the real world with researchers. And we also want to practice what we preach and put the data curation profile up there on the Purdue website, where they're trying to collect a bunch of discipline-specific data curation profiles. So that's all the contents of the training kit, everything you need to do what we did, available on the website in zip files. And if you don't have your own local speakers for the short talks, or you don't have all of them, you can use our podcasts, or you can use the PowerPoints, and the participants could present each week's session by studying in advance. And of course, in any training you should evaluate in some way, so we have an evaluation form to find out how it went. And it's all Creative Commons licensed, so you can do whatever you want with it. You can change it and make it your own. And those are some of the links. Thank you.
Okay, we have time